Hey everyone, this is Jack, and before we dive into the show, I wanted to talk to you about just a couple things. First off, this is the last of our PAX Unplugged 2018 coverage on the audio podcast interview channel. We have some other PAX-related stuff that's still going up on the video channel, which I think turned out incredibly well, but we're going to move back into our typical lineup of recorded interviews where we're not super exhausted after a day of convention time, and we won't have downtown Philadelphia sirens going on and blaring all the time, even though I think that adds an interesting flavor to some of the stuff that we've been working on up until this point. Speaking of the video stuff, if you haven't checked that out, it turned out remarkably well. It's just a monumental step up for us at the Cardboard Herald in doing live recording, which is something that I've always aspired to do. I love being there, being present among other convention attendees. It's something that I've done since the first board game conventions that I've done as part of the Cardboard Herald, and every time we've kind of stepped up our game, and I couldn't have done that without the help of the Robert Conley of Ginger Cat Productions and Paper Heroes fame, and Robert Doremus, who is a buddy here from Juneau, Alaska, who came down, and he has done so much work and helped out so much that he might as well just be honorary TCbH associate. I don't know. Intern would be demeaning to everything that he's done, but I don't pay him, so I guess I don't really know what to call him. Maybe I should pay him. I don't think he'd ever accept payment. Anyway, the last thing that I wanted to mention is that our YouTube channel, which I've been talking about, now has a custom URL slug, which is awesome. That's a big milestone for us, and it means that we have grown and we've had support and we've had viewership and positive responses to the things that we put up, and now you can just type into your favored internet browser, whether it's I don't know, it's Chrome or it's Safari or it's Internet Explorer or Netscape. Does Netscape even exist anymore? AOL. I don't even know if you can put in URLs on AOL or if AOL is a thing either, but you can put in youtube.com, the Cardboard Herald, and you will get our channel. And that ain't nothing. I'm so thankful for all the support that you've given to us and to our writing, our podcast channels, which we have 3 of now, as well as all the video content that we've produced, and it's just getting better and better, and I'm so excited about where the future has from here. So thanks for your support over the last 2 years. This interview, which is, again, our last interview that was recorded at PAX Unplugged, is a short interview, but it is with one of my favorite people working in the industry, and that's Rita Orlov of PostCurious. She's creative, she's thoughtful, and she makes some of the most bonkers things that I've ever experienced in tabletop gaming, and I just love picking her brain. So I was thrilled that I got a chance to talk with her amidst the Philly sirens and amidst the chaos of a convention, and I can't wait to have her back on the podcast to talk about her next project when she has a little bit more to say. But for now, here is our conversation at PAX Unplugged 2018 with Rita Orlov of PostCurious, designer of the Tale of Ord. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. As always, I'm your host, Jack, and coming from TCbH headquarters at PAX Unplugged 2018, I am speaking with Rita Orlov back on the show. Welcome back, Rita.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I am exhausted. How about you?
I'm hyped.
Yeah, you're hyped? All right, good. I'm hyped too, but this is day 2 of PAX Unplugged for me, and you're just coming on Saturday today, right?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, this is your first time coming to PAX. Is this your first time coming to this type of convention? I know you've been to some conventions in the past. What's your history with it?
Very little. I went to Play NYC in the summer, which is mostly video games, but it had a little bit of tabletop. And then my game was in Indiecade in October. So I went to that, but that was like really small and indie game designer. So it's my first like big board game convention.
That's awesome. And what were you expecting going in, and what do you think kind of challenged those expectations as soon as you got to witness the monstrous chaos that is a big convention like this?
It's actually pretty much what I expected, except it's much more confusing to get around the building than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So it took me like 15 minutes to find a certain place, and that was frustrating, but...
Right. Well, this is our second year going to the convention, and we loved it so much that we came back. And we're shooting a lot of video here, we're recording a lot of stuff here, and our production has kind of expanded since last year when we came. But there are also a lot more people attending this convention. There's a lot more security at this convention, which is a good thing considering some recent events, that there is a heavy amount of security here. But it definitely seems like a much bigger deal than it was even last year, which was relatively casual, navigatable. This is packed, and I'm loving it, but it is a lot to take in all at once.
Yeah, well, there's like an explosion of games and gamers, I guess, so it makes sense.
That's true. And I think that last year it was kind of the test year, and a lot of people were like, oh, we'll wait to see what's going on with PAX Unplugged. And since the buzz, and because it's not falling at the same time that Board Game Geek Con was happening last year, which is part of the debacle that happened last year, then we now have so many more exhibitors here, and more exhibitors bring in more gamers, and more gamers who have been wanting to come but wanted to wait to pull the trigger, so it just is a big thing. But I'm wondering if you're doing anything for PostCurious here.
I'm not doing anything for PostCurious here.
No? Are you doing any sort of research or making any sort of connections? Are you doing anything locally in Philly in order to kind of help out with that thing? Or is this truly just you coming as a fan of games?
Mostly just coming as a fan of games. I mean, definitely I like meeting people when it happens and giving puzzles to people when they want puzzles. But otherwise, I just wanted to play some cool games. And I mean, that on its own is a form of like research and design development.
Totally,
because
yeah.
even when I play a game that's like completely unrelated to puzzles, I still am constantly analyzing like what is good about this game and what doesn't work well about this game. So even if it's not like the same type of game, it still is a development of that kind of thinking.
Right. You know, I was talking with you earlier, and we were talking about the difference between the different media spaces for puzzles and board games, because there's not necessarily a huge overlap. And do you actually consider what the Tale of Ord and what PostCurious's whole oeuvre falls under puzzles, or do you think that it is some sort of hybrid in between puzzles and board games?
I think it's sort of a hybrid. I wouldn't call it a board game because there isn't a board.
Yeah.
But so it's a tabletop game. I guess when I started it, I was definitely thinking of it more as a puzzle game. But since I've developed it and as I'm developing my next game, I think of it, as a hybrid of puzzle and tabletop game.
I love the naming that has to happen when we're trying to define things. This reminds me of music, where we're talking about like post new wave hardcore stoner rock, if you're trying to come up with a name for one specific thing, and you start getting more and more specific but trying to capture the whole thing. I like puzzle games. That's probably the best and most accurate
probably
label.
But the problem is that most people, if they have no idea what it is, if I tell them that I design puzzle games or puzzles, they'll be like, oh, jigsaw puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles.
Totally.
And I'll be like, well, it's not that type of puzzle. And they're like, oh, well, what type of puzzle is it? And I'm like, do you know what an escape room is?
Right.
It's kind of like an escape room, a board game, and interactive fiction. And that's how I describe my game.
That was amazingly succinct and way more than I could ever do. Anyone listening to this podcast knows that it would take me at least 5 paragraphs to get to that.
I had a lot of time
narrow.
at Indiecade to work on my elevator pitch. I had to say it about 100 times a day, so...
Well, earlier you were mentioning that you got a chance to play some games. I know you had mentioned that you played Gizmos, is that right?
I did, yeah. We played Gizmos, which was really fun. And right afterwards we played Potion Explosion, which is from the same people who made Gizmos, and it also has marbles, and it was also really fun.
Yeah.
So they're both great games. Earlier today I played, I want to say it's called Spring Meadows. I might be getting that wrong. It's from the same company who made Patchwork.
Yeah.
But I haven't played Patchwork, but this game was also really cool. And before that, I played The Climbers, which is an abstract strategy game which totally surprised me. Like, I haven't seen an abstract strategy game like this at all. It's just, you're like building up, you have a tower of blocks. It's hard to explain without looking at it, but you have a tower of blocks and you're like trying to build up this tower, and every turn you can move a block or turn a block. But everybody's playing a different color, and the blocks have everybody's color and one neutral color. So you can only step on the neutral color or your color. And basically you keep building the tower, and you're trying to get as high as you can up until the point where no one can make any more moves. So then the person at the top of the tower wins.
What I love about this is your analysis of this game feels like you logging some information of how can this be part of one individual aspect of a chapter of some future PostCurious thing. Like, how can this be integrated in some clever way? But I know that you're an avid gamer and that you love checking out all these things just to play. What would you say is like the most fun thing that you got a chance to do today?
Today? Oh, well, they were all really fun. I mean, I played 5 games and they were like all great. Oh yeah, I also got to test out Rob's game, the Orthopodacy.
Orthopodacy?
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
I don't know the game.
So he was in the unpub room, and it's a dexterity roll and write. No, but there's no rolling really. It's it's a flick and write, I guess. So you're like flicking these discs, and then you're trying to collect points through these little puzzles, which are all different. There's like bees and ants and spiders. So
that sounds cool. And that was in the unpub room?
That was in the unpub room, yeah.
And for everyone who's listening at home, in a lesser podcast, you might think that we might edit out these sirens, but I want to bring the distinct flavor of Philadelphia to the listeners all over the world. So we're going to go ahead and... Yeah, exactly. You know, you're from New York. You know what's up with this.
We hear a lot of sirens.
So in regards to PostCurious, separate from PAX Unplugged, how are things going since we last talked? Are you continuing development on any new projects at this point? I know you had mentioned that you're going to continue fulfilling orders for the initial created run of Tale of Ord, but you would eventually probably retire that game as you transition to your next one. Has anything changed? Do you have any new things that you're working on or announcing?
Definitely not announcing, but
Dang, I was hoping for the scoops.
Well, I mean, so yeah, I'm still fulfilling Tale of Ord. That'll be until I run out of them, basically. I'm starting developing the second game, which I'm hoping I'll be able to put out like next fall. I don't know if that's being too optimistic, but we'll see. So that's going to be a similar type of game, basically the same structure as Tale of Ord, but it's going to be a little shorter. It's going to be 3 parts instead of 4, and each one is going to be maybe about half of the puzzles.
Right.
So it'll be about half the length, but similar structure. And I'm also working, I think I mentioned this last time, but I'm working on an outdoor game with somebody in New York. So we've made some progress on that, and that's all I have kind of actively in development. But, you know, the funny thing is, you asked me last time if I would ever consider making like a board game, and I didn't really have an answer at that point, but I was on a plane recently, and all of a sudden I had this idea.
And
I filled up like 6 pages in my sketchbook of just like very consistently writing notes for a while. I was like very sleep deprived on this plane ride. But I'm excited about it, but we'll see if it goes anywhere.
I want to see it. I would be excited to see what the mind behind Tale of Ord ends up bringing as a boxed board game.
It's not flat.
Okay, yep,
so
exactly.
That's it. It might involve a dodecahedron. That's all I'll say.
That's the best sentence that anyone has ever said. So with the Tale of Ord and then working on the next project, as you're designing a project like this, you know, in my review, in my talk with you, I've mentioned several times that I was overwhelmed by how cohesive and surprising of a thing Tale of Ord was. To me, it doesn't feel like someone's first design. It feels like something that has been worked on and refined through publishing many iterative, similar types of designs over time. And like, this is, you know, the full realization, the opus.
Wow, thank you.
Well, that's how it felt from my end of things. Like, man, this person must have been working on this stuff forever. But do you feel like you're ever having to compete with yourself? Like, how can I top the clever things that I packed into my last project? Do you ever feel intimidated by that?
Actually, yeah, I was talking to somebody about that today, because as I'm working on the next one, I'm like, oh no, what if it won't be as good as the first one? Because I've gotten so much really good feedback on Tale of Ord, which, I mean, has been, like, surprising and humbling. But now I'm like, people have such high expectations, what am I gonna do? But, well, I'll just have to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
So, have you actually met up with anyone else at PAX Unplugged here or at any convention? And, you know, just as someone in the audience, someone who was like, wait, you're Rita. Like, you made this stuff.
I'm afraid I'm not quite that famous.
Okay, well, I don't think that I'm that famous, and someone stopped me in the middle of the expo hall earlier yesterday and was like, wait, Jack? And I was like, who are you? I don't know you. And they're like, no, I love your stuff. And I was like, kind of super intimidated, anxiety-filled, proud, and also a little bit fanboying out over the fact that they might have been fanboying out about me. Like, I was probably more excited about who they were as just some random person as they were about me. Turns out they're someone who's working on all sorts of game designs themselves, and there's a huge listenership for tabletop gaming podcasts of people who design awesome stuff.
And
like
also,
yourself.
You have a great show, so
why
wouldn't he listen to it and recognize you?
Yeah,
obviously.
Well, like you, I don't think either of us are really good at setting out there and being like, I'm great, and I do great stuff, and I just welcome compliments because I assume that they will come because I'm great. You just mentioned feedback. Feedback is like sometimes, wow, I'm surprised I got positive feedback there. So, how are with 2019 right around the corner here? You're thinking that you're going to have both of these new projects out in 2019, the outdoor project and the sequel, I guess, or the follow-up to Tale of Ord?
Well, hopefully. I mean, the outdoor one I think should definitely be out. But that's not like under the PostCurious umbrella. That's
right.
Under Crux Club HQ. So they have a game out right now, but I think they're not running it through the winter since it's outside. He's working on like a book also that you can buy and then like use that, like kind of play it on your own outside by using this book, which is cool. So I think we want to have it ready for like springtime when it's actually nice out and people want to be outside again.
How did you meet up with them?
I was supposed to originally playtest his first game, which I didn't end up doing, but then we were actually his first non-playtest group to play it. And The first game, which is called Oddfellow's Secret, was quite fun, and I liked it a lot, but when I played it, I was like, this is really cool, but we can do so many more things with this idea. Do you want to make a game together? And he was like, okay. So that's what we're doing now.
That's awesome. Now, with Tale of Ord, I don't think that it's too much of a spoiler to say that it deals with archaeology to a degree, and it deals with themes having to do with Norse mythology and the research of Norse mythology, as well as Scandinavian history. And have you really nailed down what the theme and core concept of the follow-up is? Or are you starting with puzzles first, and then you're going to adapt them into what theme that you're going to work around it?
So, no, I decided actually to start with more story stuff this time because I want to make it more integrated with the puzzles. But I mean, they sort of came at the same time. So I really like Prague. And there's a super cool astronomical clock in Prague, and if you've never heard of it, Google it because it's just really cool looking, and if you look at it, you will immediately see why it would be a great puzzle. So that was kind of where I started, and Prague actually has like an interesting history of alchemy in the sort of like medieval to Renaissance, pre-Renaissance time. They have like 2 museums about alchemy and alchemists. I mean, they're both really small, but where else do you have even one museum about alchemy?
Exactly.
So yeah, and so I started looking through all these old alchemy manuscripts, and there is some crazy, weird, and interesting stuff in there.
Really? In alchemy manuscripts, there's crazy stuff? I would have never guessed.
You have no idea how weird they are, though. Like, I've just been looking through a bunch of them, and I'm like, I want to understand what this person was trying to convey with these images, because they're just so strange, and a lot of them, like, don't have a ton of text accompanied with it. Well, and if there is, it's like probably in Latin.
Right.
But anyways, long story short, so it's gonna be related to like 1400s alchemist Prague.
That sounds amazing, and now I'm excited to do some advanced research on that. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about the last game, is that it invited me to learn more about something surrounding the game itself and not just delivering on that game. Now, the last thing that I really wanted to hit on is with the development of the Tale of Ord and now this follow-up game. I think that one of the strengths that you have is imbuing the characters themselves with actual personality and character. Like they have consistency in their tone, and even as you're researching in order to solve the puzzles of the game, you're becoming invested in the story and progression of these people. And have you ever done any sort of writing yourself in the background, any fictional writing predating this? Because of course you had to do a huge amount of fictional writing for anything PostCurious related since you started. And also, do you have any ideas on how you want to further lean into the narrative hooks in future projects? Products sound so cold.
Well, to answer your first question, yeah, I used to do a lot of creative writing, like, basically since elementary school and, like, through most of high school, and a bunch in college, which was definitely not just my way of getting out of writing essays. It's just taking creative writing. But no, I mostly wrote a lot of short stories and a few short plays. as for, what was the second question?
Yeah, well,
how am I going to...
That's the Cardboard Herald special, is to ask 6 questions and 1 question and then say, go. No, the question really comes down to, you really brought some characters to life in the Tale of Ord, and I'm wondering if you have any ideas in how you can strengthen not just the puzzles for this next follow-up, but also the narrative development, make the characters even more infused with character, so to speak. Like that was something that is apart from the puzzle, but it has so much life and gives so much depth and so much theme that I would love to see you further flesh out characters in anything that you work on at this point forward.
Sure, yeah. It's definitely a tricky thing because you can't have too much written material, because people just don't want to read that much stuff, and they also are like, they also want to play a game. So if they wanted to read a book, they would read a book. But I think for this game, I think there's going to be a little more focus on the characters' relationship to each other. So you're sort of going to be looking at these documents from the past, and the people that you're actually interacting with are like other researchers in the present, but you're going to be exploring the relationships of these people in the past as opposed to people who are alive right now. Yep.
And so is there anything else that you have going on or that you're collaborating on that you wanted to bring up so people are aware of?
I think that's it. I think we kind of hit upon everything here.
All right. Well, I hope that you enjoy the rest of your time in Philly, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to actually meet you in person.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to everything that you have on the horizon. Thanks for coming back on the show, Rita.
Yeah, thank you again. It's always great to talk to you, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend here, too.
Yeah, as long as that extra Philly siren isn't coming right to our our setup over here. Thanks for coming on the show, Rita.
Thank you for listening to the Cardboard Herald. As always, everything we do is ad-free and audience-supported. If you'd like to help keep it that way, find the Patreon link at the top of our webpage, cardboardherald.com. We have several levels of support with various rewards. If you enjoyed the show, we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including reviews, interviews, and recommendations across writing, podcasts, and video. You can find that on our YouTube channel or by visiting any of our social media or our website. So with that out of the way, thank you again for listening to the Cardboard Herald.